talking about is not just for DD Day. It's really for all of the efforts that we're doing, okay? And while we are huge fans of everybody showing up on DD Day because having 600 people in the room really makes a statement, it's also a really busy day. And so you may choose to take all this information we're going to give you today, put together your one pager, and make an appointment on a day other than DD Day to go talk to your representatives. Okay, so we're going to talk about advocacy prep, mostly in terms of how to put together your story, because that is your secret weapon. That is the best tool that you have in your advocacy toolbox for for doing advocacy. And then after we're done here, we are going to have the opportunity, if you need or want to do this, to have a one-on-one session with one of the members of our committee, where we will walk through it with you and, give you suggestions, whatever. What we want to do is make sure that as many people as possible have these one-page stories that you can give to your representative as part of your advocacy. Okay, so we are going to ask everybody to stay muted. Use the chat box for questions, and definitely keep side conversations to a minimum. There's a lot of information coming at you. We will be recording. You probably all saw the recording message. We're going to post this on our website as we usually do, along with all of the documentation, the slides. We have a template for you to use for your one page if you want to do that. All of that's going up on our website after the meeting is over. Okay, whoops. Sorry. And closed captioning will be available as well. So what we're planning to talk about today. So we're basically going to talk a little bit about how to go ahead and make this all happen on DD Day. And of course, the first thing is to actually sign up for tickets. Now, you can go and advocate without going to the actual presentations on DD Day. So that's entirely up to you. We think it's a wonderful opportunity to network. We think it's a wonderful opportunity to, kind of have those really important side meetings with people. We are going to have a table where we're going to be able to help you put together a packet to leave behind for your legislators. So there are a lot of good reasons to go on DD Day. Okay. So get your tickets if you want to do that. But then the next thing you absolutely have to do is get a meeting with your legislators, okay? A lot of people want to talk to those same legislators today. 600 people are all going to be hitting that Senate building and hitting that House building, okay? So you want to make sure that you have an appointment. Now, we are going to be talking a little bit later about the possibility of people who probably have a lot of constituents that want to talk to them, possibly doing it as a group. So setting up a group appointment, everybody showing up at once and 20 people showing up outside their door also makes a statement. Okay. This is really respectful of our legislators' time. Okay. So if they can get 20 people in a 30-minute meeting as opposed to one per 10 or 15 minutes, it's much more effective. And like I say, 20 people outside the door, when they almost never get that, that makes a statement. Okay. We have a link here that shows you how to find out who your representatives are at the state level. Okay. We're also going to be talking about writing your one pager, and we're going to be giving you suggestions as to what you might want to say, how you might want to have it look. We have some examples for you to look at. We have a template if you want to use that. And again, so give you some ideas as to what to do with the one pager. And then, as I mentioned, we are going to have the ability to sign up for one-on-one sessions with somebody from SDAN. So the way you're going to do that is you're going to put your name, your email address, and some preferred meeting times. And I'd suggest you do more than one, just because we need to make sure that somebody is available to work with you. And we have several people who are willing to do that. but those appointments are also going to fill up. So we want to make sure that we have some ideas that we can schedule. Okay. Uh, as I mentioned, we have sample one pagers and to talk about what we're going to be doing on the day. Okay. So the next couple of slides actually are copied from the meeting we had last Friday, and they are used with permission by Heather Sachs, who is basically the person in charge of advocacy at the National Down Syndrome Congress. Okay, so first of all, why is it so important to build those relationships? Okay. So you are the constituent and your legislators work for you. You have the vote and they want to win that vote again. And part of the way they do that is by working with you and representing your issues. Okay. Most of these people really have good intentions. They really want to help, but you have to educate them on how they can be helpful. And also, it's really important to put faces to the issues and let them get to know you, because really that's what their job is. Okay, so one of the things we're going to be talking about in those one pagers is put that beautiful face right on the top of that one pager. But that's not the end of this. Put that beautiful face in a chair in their office. Okay, especially now, obviously, we can't do this right now, especially when the legislative session is done. Make that relationship. Make sure they know you, okay? And if you become that well-informed constituent on a particular issue, when that issue comes up, they're going to come to you. They're going to ask you, well, what do you think about this issue of, self-direction? So you have the opportunity to have a lot of influence in your representative's world. Okay. So again, now obviously we're in crisis. So now we really have to show up, okay? But we're not done when DD Day is done. We're not done when the legislative session is done. It needs to be a year-round thing. This needs to be kind of a new part-time job, and bring your loved one with you, okay? There are lots of opportunities in the Maryland IDD world to have your participant trained to be a self-advocate. They have the ARC has the whole policy making session, and it's like 3 or 4 months long, and they have multiple sessions where they train your loved one to be a self-advocate. The Maryland Down Syndrome Coalition also is going to be having a session. I don't have the details yet. I just got an email this morning that they're going to be doing that in a couple of weeks. Okay, so again, this is focused on your participant learning how to self-advocate. Okay, so the other thing is that obviously, again, we're kind of in a crisis right now. We're probably going to be doing a lot of complaining, but it's also better if they see you not just as a complaining person, but also when things are going well, calling them up and thanking them for a vote on a bill that goes your way. Okay. Putting something up on social media that gives them props for whatever it was that they did that supported something that was important to you. Okay. And again, this is not a one-time good deal. You need to keep in touch. Send them a Christmas or a Hanukkah card. Send them, keep in touch with them. Okay. Maybe a birthday card. Find out when their birthday is and say happy birthday and thank you for representing us. Okay. Um, and with whom? So here's a picture of my daughter Carmen with our former senator and now a Maryland federal representative, Sarah Elfreth. Okay. They love doing stuff like this. I mean, this is so positive. And this picture went up on Facebook. It went up on Instagram. She got tagged. We definitely gave her props for meeting with us. This was during DD Day, like 3 years ago, I think. And so again, they love doing this stuff. Okay. Um, Now, so when you make your appointment to talk to your representative, okay, you want to think about both your delegates and your state senator, okay, and their staff. Very likely you are going to be paired with a staff person. You may or may not get much more than, 30 seconds of your representative time to do something like this, to take a picture. And then you're going to spend your time with their staff. And that's okay because their staff are the ones who are designated to go out there and find out what's going on, figure out what's happening, and advise the delegate or senator how to vote. So they're counting up how many people are for and how many people are against each of these issues. They're going and getting background information for these issues, and they are educating your representative. Okay, so getting an appointment with a staff person, not a bad thing. Okay. Um, and again, you want to be thinking about building relationships not just with these legislators and their staff, but other people, key cabinet people, okay? Also build relationships with federal elected officials, okay? Now, Sarah Elfreth is probably a representative of some of you people in the U.S. House of Congress or House of Representatives. She's from Maryland. Go find her when she's around in her office. Okay. And when they do something, thank them publicly. Okay. Don't just be a complainer, be someone who is supportive as well. Okay. And be very careful, especially if they vote in a way that you don't agree with. Don't slam them. Don't shame them. Just, I would say that would be the time to call their office and say, I'm really disappointed with this vote, and I'd like an opportunity to come and see if we can't change your mind on this issue. Okay. All right, so here is a way for you to find your legislators in Maryland. So you go to the Maryland, uh, the MGA legislative maryland.gov, and then this is how you actually find your member. You type in your address, they'll tell you everybody who represents you. Okay, so for the issues that we are looking at right now, in the Senate, we're looking at the Budget and Tax, the Energy, and the Finance committees. So if your legislator happens to be on one of these committees, or even better, in a leadership position, man, target that legislator because they have a lot of influence. And then in the House, we have appropriations, health and government operations, or HGO. You may have heard that acronym thrown around, and the Ways and Means. Okay. And we do know that the person in charge of HGO is very sympathetic to a lot of our issues. Okay. So we work with her a lot. Okay. And again, how to find out who is on what committee. These are the two links that you would use to find out who's in your Senate and who's in your House committees. Okay, so Patty, if you could maybe talk about some thoughts about some of the changes in our strategy.
Sure. Well, we alluded to this a bit when Heather Sachs did her presentation last week. Up until now, through the Self-Direction Act and our general advocacy to promote self-direction, we were, asking people or suggesting that people share their stories about how self-direction has benefited your life and what a great service model self-direction is, and really promoting that. Well, right now we know that the full DDA budget is under assault. There's a proposed $200 million cut to the DDA budget. Laura Howe was sharing last evening that the DDA budget has not seen a cut in the, one small 2% cut in the 20-some years she's been doing this work. So this is a profound difference. So our strategy has to be different. And we'll talk a little bit more about what those cuts are, but it's severely going to impact both models of service delivery, provider, community-based model services, and self-direction. So, it only makes sense to, pivot your strategy to be how budget cuts will impact your life. And don't, obviously don't sugarcoat it, right? So it's great that a person's life has been better through self-direction, and it's great that there are opportunities to have friendships and social avenues and social events. But when the state is facing a tremendous deficit, and the governor's budget just came out with a $200 million hit. So that's not what's going to drive this home, is how will cuts in your budget, your self-direction budget, and the services be impacted. And what are you at risk of? What is the individual at risk of should these cuts actually make their way through? So yes, it's your story, but it needs to really focus. We think, of course, you're free to do whatever it is you feel is necessary for you and your story and the person you love. But we really are suggesting that your story focus on self-direction, how it is efficient, how it is, and the proposed cuts will impact the life of your individual.
Thank you. Okay, so we've been talking a lot about DD Day. So what is that? Okay, so it is a one-day event put on by the DD Coalition, the Developmental Disability Coalition. It's held at the Graduate Hotel on West Street in Annapolis. It's going to be February 13th this year. And typically it starts at 8 o'clock with a breakfast where you can mingle and talk to people and so on. And then there are generally 2 to 3 hours of presentations. We expect Governor Moore to be one of those presentations. And again, a group of 600 people plus showing up for this event really makes a statement to those legislators who are sitting in the audience or who are making presentations. Okay. So, and it's also an opportunity for us to hear not only from the legislators themselves, the ones who are giving presentations, but also other advocacy organizations. You know, what is the ARC's list of priorities, which may overlap with ours, or they may be looking at something entirely different that we're not dealing with. Okay, so it's just good to see the bigger picture of how we plug into this whole community. Okay, so the registration link has been published. We've sent it out in an email. I believe it's posted on our Facebook page and our group and everywhere. So you have probably been bombarded by every organization that you belong to with this link. And there's a reason. This is really important. So go ahead and get your registration done. Okay. And schedule your appointments with your legislators now. So we gave you those links to find out who your legislators are, and then you can generally click through and you can actually get the contact information for your legislator. Go ahead and call because these appointments are going to be filling up. Okay. We are going to have a booth in the lobby of the Graduate Hotel to gather and meet up. So, you know, you can have your group meet at the SDAN table. You know, that would be great. If you bring your one-pagers, we can help you put together a packet of information to leave behind with your legislators. So not only your personal story, but we're going to have an issues one-pager. We're also going to provide a one-pager with what's in the bill, because one of the things that we're going to be talking about is that the DDA is violating Maryland law. This was a bill set up to protect self-direction, and they're just blowing it off. And so that's a really useful piece of information. Here are the things that they are not doing. And almost every single major issue in the bill, they are not doing. Okay. And so one of the asks that we have this year is that we do a legislative audit, which basically goes through and looks at the bill and looks at what's happening and, oh, gee, there's a big discrepancy here. So that's one of the big messages that we are definitely promoting. Okay. And we are again helping you put together the paperwork. Some of our SDAN volunteers are coordinating those group meetings that I mentioned. Marla, do you want to take a minute and talk about that?
Hi, sure. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, Ginger. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so when, I started thinking about DD Day and the opportunity to meet with my legislator and putting my policy and advocacy hat on for my professional world, some of the strategies that have been really helpful for me personally and professionally is coordinating with other people to make office visits together. As Ginger said at the very beginning of the meeting today, there are going to be 600 people there for DD Day. And there are going to be hundreds of other people there on February 13th on a variety of other issues as well. So it's really hard to get time on legislators' calendars during specific days. And one of the strategies is to band together from other people from your district to schedule one meeting, being respectful of everybody's time, coming together and doing that in a coordinated way. So there are several of us who have posted on Facebook volunteering to coordinate for different districts. I'm not sure the mechanism for collecting all of those volunteers' information and reconnecting with all of you and others. But for instance, I've already reached out to the District 18th delegation, and they're working to coordinate time for me and others to meet with them. Just a really effective strategy when you're going into those meetings as a group. I can share, it's often doing a very brief, 1 minute overview of why we're here, talking about, SDAN's mission, vision, and then taking 30 seconds to a minute each to share your personal story. And we'll be talking about, I'm sure, how to do that in a little bit. And then your leave behind is really important because they then have that to go into more detail and to remind them of all of the things that you shared during the meetings. Yeah, so I'll turn it back over to you, Ginger, unless you want me to highlight anything else.
Nope, not right now. But I will talk about a mechanics question. So how we can do this. If you are interested in being part of one of these groups, and I highly recommend that as a strategy, put that in the chat in this group. So we're going to gather everything in the chat. If you're willing to be a leader for your district, please put that in the chat as well and give us an email address where we can contact you to coordinate all of this, okay? If you are willing to be part of a group, put that in the chat. After this meeting is over, you can contact us at info@marylandsds.org and let us know that you would like to be either part of a group or be willing to lead a group, and we will try and get all of that organized, okay? All right. Now, again, February 13th is fabulous, but you're going to be competing with everybody else in the IDD world that day. You may choose, and it's good for us to have some of each. You may choose to schedule a meeting with your delegate on your own, okay? And when you call, you want to let them know you live in their district. So I'm a resident of Kensington or, whatever, that you would like to schedule 10 to 15 minutes on whatever day you pick. Okay. And tell them just briefly what you would like to discuss, being the changes and problems in self-direction caused by the DDA policies. Okay. And the last thing that you need to organize is, if you have not been to Annapolis, parking can be a little tricky. And so this is a link to the parking guide in Annapolis. And there are a number of different parking garages that are not too terribly far away from the hotel. I have to be honest, normally when I go into Annapolis, I park at the Navy Stadium. They have a free shuttle that will get you to, State Circle and Church Circle, which are kind of uh, you know, um, sort of the area of town that you're going to be doing, and you're not too far away from the State House or the Senate, but you're not very close to the hotel. So very often what we do is we park at the Navy Stadium and then we Uber to wherever we're going. So we'll probably do that and Uber over to the Graduate Hotel, get an Uber over to the State House, and then catch the shuttle back when we're done talking to our legislators. So that's another possibility, but it's a little more fiddly. You need to make sure that you arrange your rides. Okay. All right. So as we've been talking about this one pager a lot, and it is, every advocacy organization is going to tell you to do this because it is an incredibly effective advocacy tool. Okay. And so you pair your story with a relationship with your legislator, and you are going to have a lot of influence. Okay. So we're going to be identifying the most compelling issues. And again, we're going to be talking about, this is not the year, just as Patty said, we are looking at a huge budget, shortfall. This is not the year to say, they didn't pay for my gym membership, because everybody's going to be looking, going, mm-mm. Okay. But if they're cutting your overnight staff and your loved one is going to be, there's a health and safety risk, that's a whole different kettle of fish. Okay. So when you're talking about these compelling issues, do it in the context of, is this the year to talk about this one thing, this thing that your loved one absolutely loves, that's really important to them, but maybe this year, if it isn't funded, we're just going to have to live with it. That's just kind of our contribution to fixing this mess. Okay. We want to make sure that you are expressing the issues in a concise way. This is not the time for a shaggy dog story. This is a time for bullet points. Think elevator speech. You want to be able to concisely explain this in 15 to 30 seconds. Okay, that's what you're focusing on, and your leave behind should be kind of the same thing. Okay, something that they can skim and get the point. Okay. Um, Avoid jargon. Those of us who have been in this world, we have a zillion acronyms. We have all of these fancy words. These legislators come from the outside world. They don't know any of our acronyms. They don't know our issues. Okay. So we have to educate them, but we have to use ways that like normal people would understand, who don't know all this stuff. Okay. So we're going to talk about that when we look at some of the individual issues, how we can express these things, okay, without using acronyms and without getting into the weeds. Okay. Policy weeds, this is not the time for that. Okay. What are your top line issues in English that most people can understand? Okay. And we've talked about instructions for making an appointment with your legislator, but we'll review that at the end. Okay, so you're at the end of this session, we're going to offer the opportunity to sign up for a one-on-one session with the SDAN DD Day committee to help you write that story. Okay, and again, I cannot say this often enough. Now, after the meeting, make that appointment with your legislator. Okay, it's super important. All right, so we have put together a template. You do not have to use this template. In fact, it's probably good if some of us do and some of us don't use this template, okay? Because we don't want it to look like a canned activity where everybody is coming in with a form letter. And the more uniform they look, the more likely it is to be written off as a form letter. And we don't want that to happen, okay? But here are some things that no matter whether you use this form or you don't, please, big picture right at the top of that beautiful face. That's what we want them seeing first and foremost. This is the person who is going to be hurt if you don't step in and fix this situation. Okay. You want to make sure that you give them your contact information, and especially so they can verify that you are one of their constituents. Okay, so definitely in some way, shape, or form, give them that contact information, at least name and address, and possibly an email or a cell phone number where they can contact you if they have any questions after the fact. Okay, and a short, concise statement of what is hurting your loved one, and bullet points are perfectly fine. Okay. So here's an example. This is my daughter, Carmen. This is the one pager that she and I wrote together. Okay, so the first set of bullet points are about her. Again, I want this legislator to fall in love with my daughter, okay, and be incensed that the things that are going on at DDA are going to hurt this beautiful person. Okay. And then I gave a shortened version. So what Patty was saying is this is not the year to talk about how wonderful self-direction is. Well, I've done a shortened version a little bit. Here's the big picture. Here's the vision of what should be happening. And then I pivot and say, but I can't do that now because here's what the DDA is doing to hurt me. Okay. And then I just put together, a statement at the end. Please make the DDA stop hurting people with disabilities. Make them follow the law and the rules. Okay. So I'm also a big believer in a picture's worth 1,000 words. And like I say, my goal here is to make my legislator fall in love with my daughter. So of course I'm going to show her doing ventriloquism. Of course I'm going to show her dressed up like Wonder Woman and with her little heart and in her job making pizza and that she's a cheerleader. And a lot of these pictures kind of go with those early bullet points. Okay. And again, this is just one possible way to do it. As you're going to see from several other examples, other people have done this quite differently, and you don't have to use this template. Okay, so you can just pull up Word, stick a picture up there with your contact information, and then just write your text. Okay, so who's next? Okay, Debbie, you want to go ahead and talk about what you were thinking as you helped Ryan write this?
Well, I have like a whole list of these from each year where we do this. And I just wanted to give a little bit of history for Ryan because to me it was important that they know that Ryan was in traditional services, but he'd been neglected and abused. So luckily he came out and was able to get in self-directed. And then I did the same thing. I wrote what his likes are, that are made possible with self-direction, and then what his dislikes are. Now, I had written this before I knew about the budget cuts. I mean, before this week came, I had started this. So I did go in and add the self-direction is in jeopardy line, but it was mostly, I talked a little bit about the IFDGS taking so long, about the support broker having not being allowed to talk to people anymore and how her role has changed and how his yearly plan has taken forever. I have a happy ending though, I'll be honest with you. I wrote to the governor the other day on Monday. On Tuesday, I got a phone call from the Department of Health advocate specialist. And by Wednesday night, I had an email from DDA. And the next day, Ryan's plan was approved. And the very next day, the IFDGS was approved. So my point in this, when I have done this, and I've done this for years, to go down there and talk and advocate. I used to say lobbying, but now I know you can't because you don't get paid. So we go down and we advocate. And when I meet my representatives, I don't have a prepared thing to say. I talk from my heart and I make it very brief about my son. I mean, very brief. It's definitely elevator speech. And then I think the least amount of writing that you do, like these one-pagers are the best because you do leave them behind. And unfortunately, they're so busy down there, they don't have time to read everything, but they're remembering what you said and what your eyes looked like and how you felt when you talked to them. I also do advocate all year. And all my representatives, I've gotten to know very well down here. I go to all their fundraisers, all the political events, just so they see my face and they know me when I show up. And when I have a problem, they get an email, they get a text, and I get responses. So that's basically what I did here. I loved the template. I thought the template was very easy to use. And I see your point. I could hold up several ones that I did in years past that look a little different, but the bottom line is the same. Traditional harmed my child, self-directed saved him. So that's all I got.
Thank you, Debbie. Okay. And next, Beth, if you want to talk for a minute about your.
Sure. My approach is very different. I skipped all the likes and how great my life is and went straight on to the impact, particularly with wages, and that impact is going to be great. Um, and the trouble that we're having, accessing our support broker, getting our nurse paid, getting our other vendors paid, getting reimbursements, the amount of time that it's taking, to get IFDGS or a raise or, a smart sheet done. And the number of hours that is actually costing the state, both in my time, if I happen to be billing as an admin, the CCS's time, DDA's time. We've got a lot of hours that are being spent for something that used to be done by us, perhaps in minutes, with no cost to anybody other than getting what's approved in our plans. So after listening, and I don't know if someone else is going to speak to it, after listening to the Department of Health's presentation to Finance Committee yesterday, I'm going to dig in a little bit more on this and change it up a little bit to talk about the wages that we pay as a differential county. There were questions in that presentation to the Department of Health about, well, what kind of training do these people who work in self-directed services get? And is it just the Wild West out there? And I really want to hit back on a little bit of that attitude that I heard in that presentation. So I'll change this up a little bit and tweak it to more directly address that.
And let me just kind of add to what Beth said. This is how the DDA is pushing back. They are getting personal. They're saying that we're cheating the system, that we're greedy, that this is the Wild West, and they have to put a lid on it. That's their message to the legislators. That's what we are fighting. Okay, so definitely, I think.
Let me just add: DDA did not say it was the Wild West. It was the chairman of the Finance Committee.
Mm-hmm. But I'm guessing that was seated. That may have been
it was seated, but just to clarify, yes, who used that phrase was not the department. It was a senator, and so it's a clear message that that's what the department is feeding to the legislators, and we really need to fight back on that.
But it's nice to know your enemy, nice to know what it is they're saying. Yeah. So we have an idea of how we can fight back. But yes, very important. Okay, so SDAN is going to be putting together a one-pager. I had hoped that we'd have a draft to show you today, but we don't quite yet. But we have some thoughts, and so I'm going to kind of go over that. Actually, this is kind of where we were going to talk about what was said at the Finance Committee yesterday. So Beth and Carol, I think you both listened to that. So maybe Carol, if you want to start, and Beth, add anything that you think is important that needs to be said about what was said in that meeting, other than the Wild West.
Okay. I'm not sure I remember everything that was said, but the gist of it was that self-direction is not sustainable. Giving us access to our budgets is not sustainable. They've pointed to the growth in self-direction as if that was a bad thing. While ignoring the fact that even with the growth, self-direction has 17 or 18% of the people in in DDA services and spends 14 to 15% of the money. So even with the extra access to the funding that we got with the Self-Direction Act, we're still less than providers. My key point is that our utilization numbers, which they
made a big deal of last year when they were trying to put the cap back on is represent a utilization of the funding. My contention is, and I would like you guys to really dig into your plans and what you did in FY 2024 or within the last plan year. How much of your funding did you spend? What was approved? What did you spend? And how many hours of supports did your loved one get for that money? Because I believe that if we have a 60% utilization of funding rate, it's going to represent a much higher rate of hour utilization because we don't have a one-to-one correspondence of 1 hour service equals 1 hour of the rate like providers do. So not only do we save them money, we save them money and provide much more services for that money. So, but I don't have those numbers. Those numbers aren't easy to get from DDA's figures, but individuals can figure that out. So there's a slide. Ginger, you want to show my slides?
Okay. I was going to say we'll come back to this one because these
Okay.
are some particular issues. Can I just say this and then I think yours is the next one?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So here are some things that you might want to think about as you're writing your one pager. Okay. Are you struggling with non-payment of your staff or your vendors? Okay. That's a policy everybody can understand the issue of. I hired someone, you said I could hire them, you approved their pay rate, they put in their time card, and you're not paying them. Everybody understands that, and everybody gets upset when that kind of thing happens. Okay. Do you have you lost your support broker or your nurse? So we are seeing a huge number of support brokers that are not willing to go through this new training or have been nailed by the policy that you cannot be a support broker and support your loved one. They consider that a conflict of interest. And so obviously these people are choosing their loved one over being a support broker. So we have like half the number of support brokers now that we did before these policies were implemented. So that's another thing that you can talk about. How about the loss of overnights or 2-to-1 staff or enhanced personal supports? Okay, so all of those things for people with significant needs. Okay, they basically are taking all that away and they are putting people at risk. So if you have someone who needs overnight supports because they can't turn themselves in bed, or there's a choking risk, or there's a trach that has to be dealt with, okay? If you take away that person's overnight support, you are putting their health and safety at risk, or you're forcing them back into institutional care. Okay, so that's the point that we need to make. What about plans not being approved for just an outrageous amount of time? 6 months of continuing on last year's plan while they fuss back and forth about some aspect of your plan. And we're also hearing reports that there are veiled threats that, okay, you need to accept this plan as we have offered it to you, or we're just not going to approve your plan at all. Okay, that's a veiled threat. That is totally not okay. How about hiring delays? Okay, you need staff and they're not getting approved. The wage forms are not getting approved by DDA. The FMCSs are not getting the hiring done in a timely fashion. Okay, what about any other particular thing? And just as you've heard from some of the things that came out of a number of our communications with DDA and communications with our membership where they are reporting to us that these things are happening. This is DDA's mindset. They are coming after our IFDGS. They outright want to reimpose that $5,000 cap, but they're also doing wholesale denials. Okay, and they're instituting intrusive policies to, quote, prove that you can't afford things. So up to this point, anybody who's on Medicaid, it's an understood thing that they can't afford things. They are below the poverty line. Well, now they want you to submit your bank statements and they're going to, nitpick what you spend your money on. That's just outrageously intrusive. Okay. But this is what's coming. They're putting wage caps on. We don't know what the numbers are, but they are going to be drastically reduced. They are looking at DSPs and self-direction as being overpaid. And, we've been trying to make the case that that's clearly not what's happening, but this is what's coming if we don't fight. As I mentioned, loss of overnights and 2-to-1 services and enhanced supports. That is squarely in their crosshairs. They are trying to get rid of all of that. Okay. And the bottom line, and this is kind of the big picture, they are balancing their budget on the backs of self-directed participants. And yet they're talking about an increase in the rates that they pay providers. Okay, so even though we are more cost effective, even though they're getting more bang for their buck, more services for the budget, our budgets are lower, our utilization is lower. Even though we are the most cost effective way of doing this, they're trying to cut us and increase the traditional. Okay, so this is kind of the big picture, and these are some of the things that you might want to think about as you write that one pager. Okay. So, Carol, so any more input from the Finance Committee and more ideas here?
Well, basically, the point of the Finance Committee was they see self-direction as an exploding cost that needs to be contained. They're going to propose to reimpose the cap. I think they're going to come after other things in the Self-Direction Act, like the wage exception form, because they're proposing to eliminate that altogether. So that's essentially taking away budget and employer authority. So I'm expecting that there's going to be a law or something proposed by the department that we're going to have to oppose. Yeah, so that it was just very much it felt targeted against self-direction. It's just from my own opinion. So this is an example of what I've done. I'm a support broker. I've been a support broker for 12 years. I've worked with one person who his mom has provided him a lot of supports through the years, but he had some issues behaviorally. They finally helped him get into his own home, but he still needs 24/7 supports. And he needs 2-to-1 supports when he goes to the doctor. Last year, we were able to keep them. They tried to say he didn't need enhanced supports. He didn't need all of this. We were able to keep them. This year is a different story from the things we're hearing from people already so far this year. But what I want DDA to realize is that he received 99% of the hours that he was approved to receive. So he got all of his hours, but he did it for 90% of his funding. He has full-time around-the-clock care. He has a day-to-day administrator because he is in his own home. He needs help administering that home. He doesn't get much IFDGS because they're denying his activity fees, but this was when he was paying. This is based on when he was getting them paid. So that's still a bargain. So does DDA not want people to get the hours that they say they need? Are they counting on people not getting those hours, and is self-direction in their crosshairs because we provide more hours? Therefore, in that sense, we do more funding. While my supports, and this is written from his perspective, he says, well, and this is another issue that I think we've been looking at. While my supports will always cost the state money, my being in self-direction saved the state money on my supports over any other service option. If he had been with a provider and he'd gotten that many supports, they would have paid 99% of the budget because they bill 1-to-1, 1 hour service, 1 full rate. And he would have needed multiple supports. I have 4 staff, and so this is the next part is about why it's important to keep his staff. He has 4 staff members who have worked with him for 5 to 25 years. I pay them a living wage so that they don't need more than one job. I pay them holiday differential, and now the DDA is saying my staff wages are too high and I can't pay them holiday differential anymore. I don't want to lose my staff. And I need to retain my employer and a budget authority as CMS allows and expects in self-direction. So these are just examples of things to say, to point out. I did not have time to work with the family to do their one pager yet. And that's why I'm asking you guys to look at your utilization of hours of approved funding versus funding, because DDA is only looking at funding. It can, next page, next one, Ginger.
Oh, okay. So let's take just a minute. Patty, if you want to go over.
Oh, no, this one, I didn't do this one. Sorry, I didn't realize you had changed it. Okay, so another one of my clients was rejected by a traditional provider when DDA offered them 12 years ago to have 2-to-1 supports for him all day long. They still didn't think that they could handle him. His mother quit her job, but he still needs 2-to-1 supports, and she has been working and being paid 40 hours a week for those 12 years. He's just started to get part-time staff being trained by her and the behavior specialist and the nurse on how to care for him, preparing for the time when his mother can no longer provide 108 hours of gratuitous supports every week. So for 12 years, his family has saved the state a lot of money. And we're hoping that, and so his request is, when my mom is no longer able to support me, please make sure that I have the supports I need in place. So those are the kinds of analysis to contradict the impression that they're saying about how much self-direction costs the state. And now I'm done.
Okay. So Patty, do you want to step in and talk about the bigger budget?
Sure. We've been alluding to the budget cuts, and I wish that we had a succinct Cliff Notes version for you. I'm sure that will come out soon, of the governor's proposed. Again, these are not a done deal. This is the governor's proposed budget. It has to, go out there and be dealt with. But what is being said, and let me just give you a few of the points. I'm sorry for some of the disjointedness of those, but those of us that have been involved, we're hopping in meeting after meeting after meeting, hearing, we're just in panic mode, right? So I realize we're just a little disjointed, but let me give you little notes I have from a couple of the meetings that have happened the last couple of days that are about the proposed cuts. I'm just going to tell you the ones that will specifically hit us. There is going to be an intentional look at the overall reasonable and customary rates in self-direction, and with an effort to make an adjustment to them that, in their words, brings them more in line with the Bureau of Labor Statistics wages for that typical DSP type of work. Now, that's fraught with problems, but looking at that, the DDA is looking at overall adjusting those rates down so that we would no longer have parity with, with the other service model, right? So which we have now. And so that has been a tense, and a contention that in self-direction with lower overhead and then, inability to use our whole budget, that we're able to offer higher wages. So that is something that's very visible and easily talked about. And people get the wrong impression and they think that self-direction is too elaborate. Now, never mind that we all have the same rates and we know how that works out, but they're looking at lowering that rate. Now, that can't happen instantly, but it is something that they will be certainly pursuing. They absolutely are planning to eliminate the wage exception system. Now, we all know that sometimes wage exception also suggests that there is some perk there. And let me just tell you, many of you know, so you could actually tell all of us, but wage exception in self-direction allows a person to put more money in wages, but not spend it in another area. So it's still within their authorized budget. It is not additional money. But using the words wage exception leads people to believe that you're going to pay some outlandish rate and cost the state even more money, and that's not true. you would be doing without something else in another part of your budget, right? You all know how that works, because you're going to entice, you might have to entice a person to come to your area of the state. You may be rewarding somebody that has worked for a really long time and they have escalated up in their wage increases. There was a variety of reasons listed on that wage exception form, right? That we all came up with the DDA. So that's going to be gone. Right now, you know, you can hardly even get them through, right? So they're already instituting these things, but that's going to be gone if they get follow through on it. The cap on IFDGS, they have not said what that cap would be. Now, you know that, again, this is another area that can be very misconstrued. The cap on IFDGS is your budgeted amount, what your plan has been approved for. So you have an approved plan. When we got that cap off of IFDGS in the Self-Direction Act, it was simply to allow you to utilize the money that has been approved in your plan. It wasn't additional money. It's money that's approved in your plan, being able to use it for the things that CMS says you can use it for. You have all seen how they have been artificially capping that now because they simply just don't approve them, right? They're just simply not approving your requests. Even though they're legitimate requests, they've been approved in the past, blah, blah, blah. They're going back to the legislature through the BRFA, again, you know, the budget adjustments, and wanting to put a cap on IFDGS. There was no discussion about how that is going to affect people. Many people are getting their day-to-day administrative hours out of IFDGS. There's been no discussion of how it will affect that, because the old cap of $5,000, we didn't even have the day-to-day administrator position then, right? So 5,000 capped, again, we don't know what number they're going to put on it, but they're going to cap it in a way to then not allow you to access the full budget that has actually been authorized. So we can expect those. And of course, the county differential. That is going to hit providers very, very hard. We have to be empathetic to what the providers are going through. We have to present a united front. We are one group of 20,000 people with developmental disabilities, right? So we have some specifics that are from self-direction, but we cannot allow the state to divide us, because our loved ones may pick self-direction now. They may need a provider later. And they have a combination now. So it does not do us any good whatsoever to throw providers under the bus in any way, shape, or form. The providers are going to take probably a biggest hit on this, because, you know, those counties, PG County, Montgomery County, Charles County, Calvert County, and Frederick County have a county differential. If the proposed change happens, there will be no differential. And many of those companies have built their businesses based on that revenue. Because we've had shift differentials for tell my nurse shift differentials, county differentials for a very long time. We're going to see it affect us as well, because the rates and wages in those counties will not be able to access that higher one right now. And they're already doing that again, right? So now they started saying you needed a wage exception for that to access that county differential. And then they come back and say it's not approved. So they've already started this ball rolling. But so these are some of the things that are in the governor's proposed budget, so that you might use those as a guide to what you're going to put on your one pager. Because yes, it's the policies, but the policy on wage exception and that 3 months of posting it and the 5 interviews, and all, that will be irrelevant, because they won't have a wage exception, won't be an option. So we've got to broaden out your scope from that policy manual dump that they did to us in October, November, which was horrendous, but broaden it out to, if your budget gets cut, you know, in half, you don't know what it's going to look like, right? But if they go through with all these things, your budgets are going to change. And that speaking more to that, and your civil rights are probably going to be violated, right? So if you needed to act, you know, no longer can function with the supports in your own home, and you're needing to look for more restrictive level of care, because it can no longer be maintained the way you've been doing it. So looking at a little bit bigger picture than we had originally thought, which was just fighting back on these policies.
Okay, thank you, Patty. Okay. One of the other things that we will provide at DD Day at our table is a copy of the bill. So this is a one-pager that we put together in preparation for passage of the bill. And the bill passed unanimously. So the problem is that DDA is just ignoring it. And so one of our big asks, of course, is to do a legislative audit to make them follow the bill. Here is kind of a one-page describing what the bill has. All of these were included in the bill. And so this is something to kind of remind them, and you can kind of go through the bill stipulates. And they haven't done any of those 10 things. Okay, so that will be another thing, and you can look that over, and those can be some of your talking points as well. As I mentioned, we will have a table in the lobby of the Graduate Hotel on DD Day. I'm going to be there the whole time, and my daughter is going to be there the whole time from 8 a.m. until noon. So we'll stay there a little bit after DD Day is over. And we will be able to, after you're done listening to the sessions, perhaps you have some new ideas. You can come and talk to us about it. We'll help you assemble that leave behind packet. If you want to practice, we'll be happy to practice with you. Whatever it is that you need, we're there to support you to facilitate those meetings with their legislators. But you already have to have that meeting set up, okay? And you need to put together your one-pager and bring paper copies of that with you. We have no ability to print at the Graduate Hotel. So we will have some pre-printed one-pagers of our general asks. We'll have pre-printed one-pagers of our bill. And then we'll also, possibly have some other helpful pieces of paper as well. We'll help you put together that packet where you've got a whole bunch of clear folders on order, so that in the front they can see that one pager with that beautiful picture of your loved one, and on the back they can see our list of asks. And that's something that you can leave with your legislature after your meeting. Okay. So that's basically what we are looking at in terms of DD Day. Okay. Now, feel free at this point, if you would like to have a one-pager or one-on-one session to put together your one-pager, we need your name. We need a way to contact you, preferably both email and a cell phone, and some times that you would be available. Okay. And we will try and pair you with one of the members of the team. Okay. And we'll work with you on that. Okay. Before we get into our Q&A and we address all those questions that are in the chat, I did want to take just a minute to kind of go through how to do some things, because I know that some people have had a little issue with actually making the template work correctly. So let me go over. Okay. Can everybody see the template?
Yes.
Okay, good. So now what I want to do is I want to show you, okay, I have some pictures. Let me bring up some pictures, okay? And I'm going to want to add a picture of my daughter here, okay? So I'm going to pick this picture of her dancing ballroom dance, okay? And you can see it didn't fit into the box, okay? And that's very typical. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to click on that. You see this little horseshoe thing that comes up? Click on that. You're going to choose this in-text wrapping choice. And now what you can do is you can put it in a particular place on the page. Okay, so I can now take this and I can shrink it down to whatever size I want. Okay, and it will stay there. Okay, so I can delete this if I don't want that. Okay, here's a place for me to type in my contact information. Okay, and here I'm going to type in my stuff. This is Carmen and her partner, Ishan, competing at a ballroom dance competition. Okay, and so you can type whatever you want. You can put some more pictures in here, whatever makes sense to you, whatever you would like. And again, you do not have to use this template. So if this is too much, don't worry about it. Don't do that. Just bring up a Word document and say what you need to say. Just make sure that there is a picture. Make sure that you have contact information, and then tell your story. Okay. So whether you choose to use a template or whether you choose just to bring up a word picture, all of those are good things. And again, we are perfectly happy to help you with the mechanics of putting together your one pager. So feel free, sign up for our one-on-one help sessions. And like I say, you can do that here at the meeting by putting that information into the chat. If you want to do it after the meeting, you can contact us at info@marylandsds.org. That information is on the last slide, all of our contact information. So don't worry if you didn't catch that, you'll get another opportunity. Okay, so we have a number of questions in the chat. Okay, and any sensitive or private information, feel free to go ahead and use, the info@marylandsds.org. So, Nina, is this something that you need to speak out loud? Because we're really trying to just go through the chat. If you
Well, okay.
Okay, Liz, you want to go through the chat?
Sure. I didn't see a lot of questions. It was, sorry. I mean, we could, if people would just want to raise their hand and ask their
Oh,
question,
okay.
would that be good? Let's give people a chance.
I guess
It's a small group. Let's give people a
Okay.
chance to talk.
Okay, all right.
And just keep it brief, but hopefully we can just fill it in that way, if you guys are okay with that. So, Nina, can you unmute and ask your question?
Yeah, thank you. We are in the fortunate position of not having any horrible things happen to us yet. My daughter is pretty high functioning. I have always felt from the beginning that she doesn't really need any services now that my husband and I give her a home. What she needs, we can take care of. We could save the state money by not using services at all. But if we give it up, if we give up the waiver, we're never going to get it back. And when we die, she's going to need it. So, I'd like to help. And uh, it's difficult because a lot of the excellent suggestions for the one pager involve things that aren't happening to us. The worst thing that happened is that budget approval was delayed for a very long time, but everybody got paid and, services went on, and it wasn't really such a big deal, except I got a few more gray hairs. So I feel like personally, we don't have much to complain about. Our story is not compelling, so I don't know how to deal with it.
It is because of the same reason that the person that I shared, when you're not there, and that's what's really hard for parents to take themselves out of the picture and realize how much will be needed when you're not there, how much you're doing because you're the parent. And that's what you guys have always done. I honestly think that they may be coming after family as staff again based on some of the comments that they made. So we That's what started SDAN 8 years ago. They were proposing a waiver amendment that was going to eliminate the ability to hire family as staff. Hiring family as staff has saved the state a lot of money. It also ensures people get their services, especially during the pandemic. Which again is one of the reasons why self-direction may look more expensive, because people get their services. But so you can say that you need to feel secure that your daughter's going to have the supports that she needs at the time. I mean, the odds are you're not outliving your daughter. So that is a very real fear that you all face, and that needs to be acknowledged and respected by the people in our state.
Yeah, I think you don't fail to have, don't let yourself not imagine what could happen. I think we all tend to do that. So, Ariel, would you like to unmute, please?
Yes, thank you. I apologize if this is repeat because I did come on here late, admittedly. But I heard somebody mention something about the DDA going after reasonable and customary wages, lowering those down, and the county exceptions. And that this is going to affect not only self-directing participants, but traditional participants. Can you just break that? Can you unpack that for me a little bit?
I can tell you what the discussion was when they talked about it. DDA said that the rate study was done many, many years ago now. It had basically been going on for several years, but it started at least 8 years ago.
Wow.
The DDA actuary that they hired to do this rate study and came up with the BRIC method, which is each component of the rate for admin, wages, and that kind of thing, were developed. Their actuary said they did not believe that there were sections of the state that should have a higher rate, like Montgomery County, like PG County, like St. Mary's County, wherever, and that's St. Mary's County, isn't it? If there's 5 counties, Frederick County.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's 5 counties. So anyway.
Charles and Calvert and Frederick.
But
Right.
I believe that the advocacy efforts of the provider organizations at the time pushed back on that over the years that it took to finally get the final rates. And there was and has been a rate differential. Apparently, there was also one in the old legacy system as well. I'm not really familiar with that. So now DDA has gone back to what the reports said and what the things said and what their adversary said, actuaries said 8 years ago, and saying we don't need that rate. That is going to be a major part of the advocacy from the traditional providers. That really does have the potential to shut down some community providers.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the actuary, do you guys happen to know the actuary, where DDA is getting this actuary? And if there are alternative actuarial organizations that can be used to basically my expert versus your expert. Your expert says this, our expert says that.
So
That would-
the Maryland Association of Community Services, which is MACS, does have an actuary. And if you sit in and listen to the rate study meetings, when they let that actuary be on them, which they don't anymore, that actuary was often pushing back on a lot of points that the DDA contractors were making. So they have been pushing back on this for years and years and years. I don't expect that this is going to go away without a major effort on their part.
Maryland Association of Community Services?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Max.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. If anyone wants to ask a question and can't find the raise hand button, you did put it in the chat, and I'll, just tell me you want to talk. And thank you all so much for coming.
Let me just answer one question that came from the chat. We will be putting the template, these slides, and this recording up on the SDAN website, marylandsds.org. Okay, so
sure. I will email you too.
Yes,
We have everyone's email.
Right.
Yeah,
at least
give
a
us
few
a little time.
hours. At least a few hours, because it takes Zoom a minute to process the recording, and then we have our web person who may or may not be available right immediately to put it up on the website. So it'll be there as quickly as we can get it.
There's a question now. What compels them to be making these changes? We can only surmise is the budget deficit that the state is facing. SDAN is going to be having, and Patty, you can maybe talk about an opportunity for people to talk to someone about filing their own OCR complaint, Office of Civil Rights complaint. SDAN has hired an attorney in a very targeted way to address the law and some of the things that we see. They will be at some point writing a letter for us. So I believe that, and some people are going to need to hire an attorney if they're denied and they want to go to appeal. I mean, you can go to the appeal without an attorney, but it's not a really good idea.
Or did you want me to say this couple things?
Yeah, sure.
So one of the projects we told you about before, one of the projects, SDAN has hired the Maryland Down Syndrome Association they have offered to do a project to teach people and help people file OCR complaints. Complaints to the Office of Civil Rights, the federal government, is a really important thing if you believe your civil rights are being violated, but it is a long-term strategy. OCR investigations take a very, very long time, but they wield a lot of weight. When the federal government Office of Civil Rights comes down on a state, they have to pay attention and they have to fix things. So it is absolutely something to do. So we'll be publishing that project. Amanda's group is going to do a video on how you do it, and they're going to be available to help people literally to do their complaint. And so that's something for sure. Let me bring one thing. Two thoughts came to my mind as you all were talking, and I'm doing 6 other things. But what I've been involved in we have been involved in 2 PCP meetings now in 2025, where plans were coming back approved or not approved right now. The larger budgeted plans, the ones with 24 hours or close to it, we're seeing a new response. And the response is full denial of the plan, all services in the plan, full denial. And the reason, not cost effective to the state. This is the first time we've seen this in all the years I've been doing this. So with if you do this, we'll approve it. Not if, let's talk about a different mob, nothing. Plan denied, not cost effective to the state. So if you're in the PCP process and you're getting, into that now, be prepared that if you have a high dollar plan with many hours in it, that, that could be the response. So we don't know how that's going to play out. I think one is my customer, they are filing appeal, but we don't know.
And please let us know that. I mean, if the more people we know what's happening, the more chances we have of connecting people that may be able to pull resources to fight back.
So there is a statement in the waiver, right? That says you'd have to go over look at the waivers, and you'd have to find this, that there is a statement in there that it has to be, the service has to be in the most cost-effective way, right? So, and it always has been, but the state is trying to say that these 24-hour plans, people that need 24-hour services, is not cost-effective. Perhaps they mean It would be less money to the state if they were in a residential setting. I don't know. There's no details, but they, as a state, and in the waiver, it does say something about being cost effective. But that's their new strategy that we're just starting to see. So go in to your PCP with eyes wide open. There's no mandate for any state to offer self-directed services. No state has to offer a self-directed option. That is an option that Maryland does, but they don't have to. So they can pretty much have a choice on that. CMS does not tell the states they have to have self-directed option. The second thing is the concept of uncompensated care. So this came up last night in one of the provider meetings I attend, just to understand and support them as well. But that they are actually providing a lot of services in the provider agencies that they are not getting paid for. Just like you all are not getting paid by these FMSs, and I'm not getting paid as a nurse for lots of work I've done. The providers do a lot of work and support people, and they don't get paid as well. And they are naming that uncompensated care, so that it actually giving it a name and understanding that there is a contribution happening that they're not getting paid for. And how can the state actually rely on that as a service model to expect agencies to provide uncompensated care? Well, we're the you as parents are the uncompensated care, right? So if you are, all the care that people do, supports that they provide that are not being paid for. So it's another way to use that language, is the person needs 168 hours a week of care and support. They all do, right? And like I said, there's a few folks that go without staff for hours at a time, but mostly, there's 168 hours in the week and they need support all 168. The government is only paying a certain amount of that, right? That there's uncompensated care happening, or gratuitous care, whatever words you want to use, but using that in your conversation. And yeah, that's a good thing. These aren't natural supports, because it is not natural to be supporting your 45-year-old son or daughter. That's not a natural thing in most families, right? To provide the direct care, ADL care, medicine care, everything to an adult. So yes, Rita was asking, so DDA is not paying agencies? Absolutely. Agencies say they stopped reimbursing agencies for state-only funds. There are people that don't get waivered funds. They are only eligible for state-only money, and the community providers have been paying, because they're not going to they care about the people. They don't just put them out. They've been serving somebody for 20 years. They don't just put them out on the street. I know we've all had horror stories. In any congregate care setting, you're going to get horror stories. Debbie and I, both our sons went to school together on the Eastern Shore, right? Well, there was plenty of times where Ethan came home and they weren't the clothes I sent him with, and his stuff disappeared. It was like group laundry, right? And there were lots of things that didn't go well that we had to fight. So congregate living is always going to have issues. Some are going to be really extreme issues, and some are going to be like, you can't keep my kids' laundry straight. But that doesn't mean that we just throw all the providers under the bus for that. That's not true. There's many of them that are doing as good a job as they can in the situation they're in. So yes, they're taking care of people, providing supports, and not getting paid. Karen Lee spoke up at the, and she runs the SEEK organization, that they're out $250,000 currently for services provided to self-directed customers, vendor services that they have not been paid back by an FMS. So it is not all rosy on the other side of the fence, right? It's not like we're the ones being persecuted and the community providers are not. They're not getting their one-to-ones. They're not getting the two-to-ones. They're not getting that stuff, just like we're not getting it. So yes, they are putting out lots and lots of services without getting paid for them. So, we have our differences, but let's not think that theirs is all rosy. Many of us chose not to do those services for our loved one. But anyway, so I wanted to bring those things to your attention.
Yeah. Thanks, Patty. So, Suzanne, if you could unmute, and we'll say hi to Kathy. You're muted. Suzanne, can you unmute? Look for the little microphone button. It's usually in the lower
That
left.
should,
Yeah,
is
so
that
There you go.
right?
That's it.
Yeah, there
Can
you
you hear
go.
me now?
Hi.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hi,
Okay.
Kathy.
Here's
Hi.
Kathy.
Hi.
hello.
Thanks for coming to our meeting. We need your voice.
You like that, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can wave again. They didn't see the first wave. Okay, there you
Well,
are.
wait.
You're gonna have to tell them that you got to be moving off quick because you got PT to go to, okay?
All right.
Okay, now say
Work
goodbye.
hard. Get strong.
Bye.
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 Nice to meet you.
You too. Bye.
Yeah, she's been sitting here patiently listening while I'm going through this with y'all.
Well, that was fun. Thanks
Yeah.
for
There is
having
one
us.
thing I want to tell people before you all go away. Debbie, when you wrote to the governor, you completed the governor's survey form online, correct?
You're muted, Debbie.
Forget that part. Yes, and actually, it was Delegate Fisher who had the link on one of his emails about go in here and tell him how you feel about the tax increases. So I thought I'm going to use that link and see what happens. And I kind of screenshot the link I used because I don't know how to copy and paste stuff like links. But yeah, that's the one that I got a response to, and I was shocked. Everybody said I wasn't going to get a response, but it was so quick. The very next day, the lady from the Constituent Associates Services called me. And then that evening, I got a letter from
Wesley Huntman.
Thank you. Wesley Huntman, who said that he looked into my son's plan already and that it was in the Southern Maryland region and I would have an answer by Friday. But magically, it was a miracle. We got an email the next morning that my son's plan had been approved.
So it's hard to find, it's hard to reach the governor any other way. And it will go from his email to that portal where you fill out the form to the constituent services for the Department of Health. But
Yes.
It worked in this case. And I did it a long time ago and I did hear from them. I just didn't have such a specific issue as Debbie. So I did hear from somebody, but I was really happy to hear that. And I wanted her to share that story. So if you're in that situation, find that link. I think it's on the governor's
Please do it.
page.
And I also try to have a good connection with your your regional office, your regional DDA office. It's always good to have one person in the office that you can always call and say, look, this is the problem I'm having. And ironically, I'd been trying to get my son's dental sedation paid for since October, and it wasn't going through and it kept being kicked back, or, everything goes to Christy Culbreth and it was just not getting through. And then we resubmitted the new price because in January it went up $500. Then that's another reason this is costing us all money, all these policies, because it would have been $500 less if they'd had approved it in October or November. Now it's going to cost $500 more in January. So I did that. And there was a little note that said, from Christy Culbreth, I got once my CCS submitted the new cost sheet, and it said that it was up for review. And I thought, oh my God, another 20 days. So I called Tia Henry at the Southern Maryland regional office, and it got approved while I was on the phone. So you got to be persistent, but you got to be nice, and you can't just yell at them all the time, although you'd like to. But once I got that letter from Huntman, and I think I forwarded it to you, Carol, my response, I sent him a 2-page letter. Did I send you that?
Yeah, I think you did. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I'll send it to you with all the problems I've been having, because he had a little statement that said, next time contact your CCS. And so my response was, well, thank you, but I do. and they are all overburdened as well. And I already found out I'm losing my CCS and I'm going to get another one. And my first line to my new CCSs is, so what, I got to train a new one? And that's how I always feel. So you got to be persistent. You got to stay on top of it. And it's hard. It's hard for all of us because we're doing this and we've got these children that we're also still taking care of. And I say children because, yeah, they're adults, but they're still our children. So that's it. Be persistent.
Thank you.
Liz, do you want me to say my little piece?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
And that'll close us out.
Oh,
Patty,
no,
Patty.
I'm a big picture person, a vision person and a rah-rah person. So some of you don't know, my sister I adopted 2 children out of institutions 30 some years ago. So I have her experience as well, raising the kids that she had, and then of course my own son, Ethan. I'm sick and tired of the conversation about our kids costing money. And this is how I look at it. And my sister and I looked at it all along. Our kids, grown or not, like Debbie says, they're still our kids, right? Cost money. And in the state of Maryland, we value life. At least everyone says they do. And we don't take them out and get rid of them. They're going to cost money wherever they are, whether they're in your home, in a home provided by the state, in a hospital, in a nursing home, wherever they are, they cost money because we value life and we don't euthanize them. Now, I know that sounds like a bold statement, but we mean it. We make a commitment when that preemie is born at 28 weeks, we make a commitment to keep that baby alive. And then everything that comes after that, or in my case, it was a child with Down syndrome, or another case is a child being diagnosed with autism at age 4, 5, or 6 or something. We make a commitment to these kids. And then where is all the conversation about our commitment to strengthening families and supporting families? So that's my argument back is stop telling me they cost too much money. We're going to pay for them wherever they are. Now, if we have them in an institution or we have them like, we have a couple still left, or we have them in residential, they're not as visible. So the general public doesn't see the money being spent on them. And they certainly don't see the mother or father being paid to provide care. But out here in self-direction, we're very visible. And they see that a person may have employed a family member. Well, then all of a sudden, everybody in your whole world's got an opinion, right? Oh, you're just doing it for the money. Oh, this. But if you are unable to care for your own child and that child goes into a state institution or foster care as a youngster, nobody is saying anything bad about that parent. Nobody says, oh, that parent's just taking advantage of the system. They just gave their kid up. They don't say that because they don't see it. So out of sight, out of mind, but now our self-direction is visible and we're out there and we're saying how wonderful our lives are being. And so we're up for scrutiny and everybody's got an opinion about how the money's being spent. So I like to look at the bigger picture and say, stop. Disabled kids cost money for the duration of their life. And we're going to pay for them one place or another. Now we can do it in a person's own home with the in-kind contributions of their family, the housing and the transportation and the food and the private insurance and the clothes and all that, or we don't. And so I just say, I do not want to hear the bull about our kids costing money because they cost money wherever they are and you're perfectly fine with it as long as you don't see it. End of rant.
Thank you, Patty. Not a rant.
Amazing rant.
A sermon.
It's a sermon. Yeah, I should have been a preacher. Huh? Well, sometimes we just can't buy the bull, right? We just can't buy the narrative, and you got to turn the narrative around and speak the truth, and maybe that will become what people continue to pass the law.
Well, thank you all. Thanks to everybody who participated. And we will be getting back to everybody who asked for a one-on-one session when we figure out when you guys need support and when we're available and all of that good stuff. So awesome. Thank you so much. And we will all move forward together.
We'll be in touch. Thank you. Bye.